Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
Doing great. How about you, Eric?
Fantastic. We are wrapping up Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah, I had a wonderful time with my 20 people over, family and close friends and stuff, and looking forward to being a grandpa in a couple of weeks. So it's cool stuff.
Very cool. Yes,
And
we had a much smaller family gathering.
Yeah, but it's kind of funny. Here we are in fickle New England. I'm 20 miles north of you, and for 2 days they've been talking about this snowstorm that's supposed to last for a day and a half, and so on and so forth. And you're 20 miles south of me. You got nothing on the ground. I have maybe 3 inches with school canceled and stuff like that, but nothing much is really going on. So the first snowfall always looks nice, though.
Yeah, well, welcome to winter in New England. That's,
So
as we kick off the holiday season, we're going to talk today about creating processes. Now, what does that have to do with kicking off the holiday season? Well, we all have holiday traditions, getting together with family, specific meals that we make, different activities that we do. And we do the same things year after year because they create an environment of joy and warmth. Well, what we're doing with these traditions is we are creating processes that will generate the feeling that we want. Because when you have the same traditional meal and it's prepared the same way, the recipe doesn't change, you get the same result. And most of our holiday traditions are based around this, doing the same thing year after year to create that feeling of warmth and camaraderie and family. And what we're doing is creating processes. So what we're going to talk about today is how we're creating these processes to create different efficiencies, different feelings, and to make sure you're creating that same experience time and time again.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, you brought up a good point. In preparing for this, I was kind of looking at this more from like business projects and so on and so forth. But you bring up a wonderful point as far as holiday traditions and so on and so forth. As I said, I mean, we had 20 people over for Thanksgiving, and we've had a lot of other events at the house. And there's certain things that you got to do every single time. You have to make up a list of who's coming. You have to prepare the house. You have to, do a lot of other things as far as cooking and that kind of stuff, which I totally leave to my wife. And but there's so many different things that go into that. And obviously, for a process, the most important thing is to just chunk down the items that have to be done, prioritize them, get them organized, and put them down on paper or in some type of a project management system, so that you can make it work the same every time. And obviously, a lot of successful businesses are there because they do the same thing every single time. We've talked about other things such as in the E-Myth Revisited and building up a business where you can expect the same result every single time that you go there, as opposed to going there one time and having a great experience and then the next time it's totally different. It's because they have these processes written down on paper, and they do the same thing every single time. And it takes upfront organization, but once you have that down, you got something really good going.
Right. And, most people get very nervous when you start talking about processes and operations. It sounds so complicated. But the main reason that I bring up holiday traditions is because when you look at it that way, it becomes simpler. And one of the simplest processes that people follow all the time is a recipe. And it's simply a list of everything you need in the amounts you need it, and then step by step how you put those pieces together. And you can actually use that format for any project. You sit down, you figure out exactly everything you're going to need, how much of it you're going to need, and then put step by step how you turn those supplies or those skill sets, depending on what your project is, into the finished project. And when you do this, that project can be done over and over again, always getting the same result, creating the same experience. And that's something that's very important for businesses. You're not just providing a service or selling a product, you're creating an experience. And that experience is becoming more and more important because companies like Best Buy, for example, or Target, there's absolutely no reason that you can't go to Amazon and get the same things as going to Best Buy or going to Target. So Best Buy and Target have tried to create experiences coming into the store, where things are located, the lighting, the fact that you can get help, that you can talk to an electronics expert at Best Buy. They create these experiences, and every one of those experiences is created by putting down a process that all of their employees are expected to follow.
Yeah, and obviously the difference between personal experiences and doing things online. Here we are talking on Cyber Monday, but it's really really nice to be able to go out and do that. I mean, I'm looking for a new TV or whatever. What I want to do is rather than go on to Amazon, I'd rather just go look at them first, do some research online to see what's going on. There's a whole lot of different things you can do as far as that goes, going to Consumer Reports, looking at other ratings and so on and so forth. But there's something to be said for the personal experience. And what you're talking about, I love the word recipe. Obviously, I like to do research on things that I'm going. As I said, I was looking more at business projects and came down with this article saying 5 steps to getting a project done. And the 5 steps, number one, is collecting all the work related items. And obviously, in your recipe thing, that's the different
Right.
things you need to do to
That's
make
your
it.
that's your ingredient list.
Your ingredient list. And then once you have your ingredient list, number 2 is develop a process. Okay, what are you going to do with these things? You're not putting the frosting on before you bake the cake, that kind of thing. So what are the tasks and so on and so forth that have to be done? And a lot of times you're doing this with a team, even if you're throwing a house party. Obviously, I got to make sure that the house is set up with the tables and chairs and so on and so forth. We got to plan on the timing for the meal and whatever. So number 3 is getting organized. And this is where coming up with like a management tracking thing as far as when things are going to get done and by whom is really, really important. Step number 4 is setting up a time to review things. This is getting together. If you're doing a project at work, it's getting together with the team to go over where you are, where you're going, and so on and so forth. So it's really, really important to review things. And then number 5 is, instead of just waiting to do things when everything is in place, is just dig in and get to it, do things. So I love the recipe thing as far as, okay, how are we going to get this meal done? First, we're going to go shopping and get all these things. This is what we're going to do to it, and so on and so forth. So I think we're talking about recipes for projects here.
Exactly. And there are so many lessons, management lessons, organization lessons that you can learn from professional kitchens and recipes. Anthony Bourdain, in one of his books, talked about the fact that when he goes into his kitchen, everything has a specific place, so he doesn't have to waste time finding things. When they go to cook a meal, when they cook a dish, all the ingredients are out so that they know, okay, I've got everything set up. Professional kitchens are set up in stations. So you've got one area where one thing is done and just that one thing. And then you move on to the next station. So there's different, you can take lessons from this and apply them to businesses. And the order that you do things in is very important. Like you use the example with the cake, you don't put the frosting on before you bake it. I've spoken to a number of retail people, and the people that I've spoken to worked at the Apple store, but prior to working at the Apple store, they worked at other retail locations. And they told me one of the things that sets the Apple Store apart, why the experience is so different, is the way they train the employees. Now, it's what they learn is pretty much the same thing. No matter if it's Best Buy or Walmart or Apple, they all teach the same lessons. But what these employees noticed was the order that it was taught. Because at Apple, the first thing they were taught was how to service the customer. At other stores, the first thing they were taught was how to avoid theft and how to avoid product loss. So it's a big difference because one, you're putting the customer first, the other, you're protecting yourself from the customer first. And just learning the same things in that different order created a different environment for the employees. It was okay, our job is taking care of the customer, not taking care of the store. And that experience from the employees spills over into a better customer experience. So the order that you put these ingredients together is very important.
Absolutely. And obviously, a good customer experience turns your customers into your business development people because they're going to talk you up and other people are going to go see you. You're going to get the reputation. Whereas on the other side, if you get that reputation where it's just about the company, and even though you got good stuff, it's not about the customer and you're going to have a lousy experience, that word's going to spread also. So,
Right.
one of the things that we have talked about in the past is time management systems. And probably a couple of years ago, we reviewed a book called Eat That Frog, which is
Yes.
one different techniques for time management. And a few of the things that you were talking about, again, getting back to the recipe thing, tip number one is set the table. Decide exactly what you want. Clarity is essential. Write down goals and objectives before you begin. Preparing thoroughly is another one. It's proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. That's a mouthful. And following that is doing your homework, which is identifying all the different things that have to get done. We also talked about slicing and dicing the task, breaking the large tasks down into smaller chunks. So bringing back that old book, Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy, it's just 21 chapters of different tips that you can have. The book is about 100 pages long, and there's a quick exercise afterwards. And you'll probably put sticky notes on the chapters that you like to help you out. So a lot of these different books attack the same thing in different ways. But time management is really, really important. And getting organized in the first place is the way to be very, very efficient with your time management. That's tool number one.
Yes, time management is crucial for any project. And creating a process to manage your time is important. And it can be as simple as a checklist or a schedule that you stick to. In fact, one of the time management methods that I've looked into that's been promoted by the Harvard Business Review is the fact that when you have a project, you don't necessarily have a deadline implicit in that project. It's just this is something that has to be done. And the first thing they suggest is put a deadline on it. Even if it's an arbitrary deadline, don't treat it as arbitrary. Decide what the deadline is going to be and meet your deadlines, because that forces you to do things more efficiently. There's an old saying that a project will expand to fit the time allotted. So if you allot a lot of time because there's no real deadline, it's going to expand to fit all of that time and you're not going to get a lot done.
Yeah, setting a deadline, even if you miss it, you can always set a new one. But having something to take a look at is really, really important. We talk about having the beginning with the end in mind, which is right out of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Part of that is planning on when it needs to be done. In another article I read, though, a lot of times we're going to have a list of what has to be